like I open my eyes in the morning and I open my Telegram and it's just like 1,000 messages from like the different news outlets. Remember who's responsible for the police department, for the internal security?
It's Ben Gvir.
It's Ben Gvir.
It's
Ben Gvir. It's he's the worst of the worst. So imagine if the worst is taking care of that department, don't expect anything good out of it there.
Welcome to Women Ending War, the podcast where Palestinian and Israeli women talk about partnerships for peace, real solutions, and ideas for crafting a new world.
It's where we express our pain, anger, dreams, creativity, and vision, where hope is a conscious choice.
معاكم أميرة مسلم.
I'm Elana Stockman. Thanks for joining us.
Hey.
Alana, hey.
Oh, Elana. It feels like a century without talking to you, though I saw you almost 2 weeks ago. But with everything that is happening, it's just every day feels like 100 years, you know?
Yeah.
It's just so hard.
Every day we're bombarded with like so many things.
Yes.
One worse than the other.
And, you know, like on all levels, on all aspects. It's either occupation, settler violence, the state recognition, the war, Gaza, the genocide. It's just Iran, you know, the Houthis, the Yemen. It's just like I open my eyes in the morning and I open my Telegram and it's just like 1,000 messages from like the different news outlets. Before the 7th of October, like 2 years ago, before that, I used to open my Telegram and I would find like 5 messages on the media outlets during the night. Now it's like 1,000 per night. And it's crazy and it's sad and it's really, it's just tiring, you know? I'm just so tired. I'm so tired. We have been talking and repeating and like shouting and screaming to stop, because nobody should endure this. Not us, not you, nobody. Just because some people on the chairs, our leaders decide to be stubborn and they want to prove their point that the other side is bad or like, and what? And the victims are the normal people. And everywhere it's just worse. And we think that we, you know, living here is worse. Then you look at the other area, it's even worse. And then you look at Gaza and it's no comments, you know, it's just, it's crazy. And the settler violence, Elana, it's just abnormal. I mean, like, it's crazy. These kids, these settlers are so immune, are so out of control. They are doing everything that they can and that they do without any kind of accountability. And like, for example, just now, Rosh Hashanah, right? And it's vacation days, and it's holidays in Israel. And guess what? All these kids who were off from their schools, from their work, whatever, they came to the West Bank. They brought them, I can share with you a video. They brought them like in a car with an open trunk with like 10 kids in the trunk sitting, coming to the outpost in Ras Al Auja to spend the holiday in the West Bank in an illegal outpost. It's not even a settlement. It's an outpost. It's illegal in the Israeli law, in the international law, in any human being law, you know? And they came and they are kids, like really kids, 14, 15, 16. Some of them are even younger, like 10, 12, 11. The other day that like one of them had like his son, like little baby, maybe 6 or 5, you know, beside him and going around the Palestinian communities and harassing them. Oh my God. And just 2 days ago, we had 2 incidents for our activists in the UCPIP and Ras Al Auja. 2 from our activists were injured. One of them is an older man He's an amazing man. He's from the States.
The
He's
one
American. And he was stoned by a
so
little teenager, stoned with rocks. And then when he finished from stoning him, because this man fell on the ground, the young boy approached him and started kicking him everywhere in his body. Like you have to see all his body bruised, and it's so sad. It's so sad. A little boy beating up an older man, like like imagine it's your grandfather or your father or whatever. They don't care. They don't care. These kids are so abused from the system that they are acting like robots. They tell them to kill, they go to kill. They tell them to harass, they go to harass. And they don't have any feelings. They are
it's
empty.
dehumanization. It's the dehumanization process. They're
Yeah.
taught, that that person is not a human. They don't count. They are lesser or terrorist or
And you know
enemy.
what? And you think, okay, dehumanization of Palestinians, fine. We heard it so many times and we are talking about it all the time. But this man looks very American. He's like white, a little bit blonde, very American. Yani you don't see him as Palestinian with a hijab, or with a hatta or with whatever. He is American. And the kid knows that this man is American because he has been in the field for a while. And still, he didn't care. It's not about Palestinians even. It's about those kids, how they are just brainwashed
Indoctrinated.
and
Yeah.
indoctrinated
Yeah.
to see anybody who is not Israeli or Jewish, who is not by their side in the outpost or the settlement, he's not a human being. So this next incident, the next morning, was for an Israeli activist, the one we interviewed, Ben, our dear Ben. Like the guy, Avishai, he's the head of the outpost there, and he wanted to empty the water tank for the Bedouin community. And so Ben went all the way to the tank and held the handle of the tank and didn't allow this Avishai from like opening the water tank because there's no water there. They took it all. And Avishai came with his stick and like put Ben's hand between the stick and the handle and he like crushed it. So like Ben was bleeding so much. We have this on our page on Instagram. They don't care. They just don't care. They just want to intimidate Palestinians and whoever is standing up for the justice. It's not about standing up with Palestinians, Elana? It's not. So it's really
I'm
sad
so
and
sorry.
and it's
How is he
crazy.
now? How is his hand now?
Ben is fine. He's doing fine. Donaki is really he's hurt. He's really hurt. I sent you the video earlier. His like leg is very swollen, and like all the bruise is going down to his ankle and feet. And he's an older man. He's almost 85. Poor man, Yani. He's
It's
coming
heartbreaking.
to.
It's heartbreaking on so many levels.
Yes,
It's
and you know
it's
what?
so
This
heartbreaking.
Donaki told me.
What?
I just want to tell you what he told me, and it was wow. This man is just so sweet, so amazing. He told me, Amira, I'll be fine. I'll be fine. But what hurts more and most is seeing that kid laughing and smiling while he was stoning me. It just broke his heart. Like he doesn't care about his injuries as much as his heart was broken for that kid. For that kid, young 13, 14 years old.
I
So
feel
yeah.
that. I can feel that. It breaks my heart also in general to witness Israelis who don't care, who like aren't interested in what's happening to Palestinians, who just shut it all out or who make excuses, or say, oh, well, I don't even want to repeat it. It's just so, but it absolutely breaks my heart to hear things like that.
Yes.
to witness things like that too. Because also, if obviously the person who's hurt is hurt the most, but the person doing the hurting is also it's also like a tragic loss. It's a tragic loss of a
Yes.
human spirit. And we're doing it
Yeah.
en masse. When we're doing it as a community, as a society, it's like it's this deterioration of our people, of our culture, of our
Yeah.
humanity. It's just, and I'm trying to think like, how will we get that back? What kind of work is it going to take to change it? Because that's the only way this is going to end. The only way this is going to end is if people doing the hurting make a decision to not do that. And that takes the work of unlearning all that dehumanization. And how does that happen? I mean, this is the question that occupies my mind all the time. How do we change this? How do we fix this? I mean, that's why he was saying he was heartbroken, because it's that you're witnessing the loss of empathy. You're witnessing the loss of humanity in the person, and then circles and causes all of these circles of
Yes.
more pain and suffering. And how do we stop that? How do we get inside a person's heart and teach them to see the other person as a human being? How do we do that work?
Elana, for me, what I know it's not easy. Like it's easier to say, but there are so many levels that we can like that can be done to change the status quo. But it will start first with the removal of the fascist government. Honestly, when we
Yeah,
have a more leftist, or I don't like to even call them leftist, but like more, more government that will look at their neighbor as their neighbor, but not as the human animals. It
right.
will start there because that's when you can change the education system. That's when you will do collaboration and coordination with your neighbors. That's when we will go back to the table of negotiation, of peace activism, of dialogue, of so many things. But until then, there is no chance to do this anymore.
Right.
I was one of the people, and I will say it all the time. I was very proud and very proudly saying that I'm like a peace activist. I'm going to sit with Israelis and talk with Israelis and do whatever it takes to to end this craziness because nobody deserves to live in fear. To start with, other of course all the other things, but to start with fear. And now there is no space for this work. There's a lot of hurt that is happening. Look here
Yeah.
in the West Bank.
Yeah.
Look what's
Yeah.
happening to us. I'm afraid to just move from one village to the other. It's not like from one city to the other. It's from one village to the next one. It's just so scary because you will have IDF, you have police, and you have settlers. And settlers are the worst of the worst because an IDF, you know that there is a checkpoint, so you have to be careful. So da. You have to, like for example, I cross the container checkpoint. I normally have like loud music in my car. When I cross the checkpoint, I put it down or like I mute the music. But going through a road where there are settlers, you never know from where they get out. Or maybe I'm always like closing the windows because I'm afraid that they will hit me with a rock. I'm afraid. I'm just like, and I'm like with my son beside me. I tell him, Habibi, if anything happens, just go down the chair. Don't panic. I give him instructions before we go for a ride from here to there. This is just impossible to live like this forever. And then they say, oh, why there is an attack, a shooting attack or a stabbing attack in Israel? Every act has a reaction. I'm a non-violent person. I'm
Cultivating.
against any kind of violent action. But you know what? From what we see and what we experience, from like humiliation, from killing, from from insulting, from everything. You never know how anybody would react.
Because they're in so much pain. If you're being forced into unlivable situations where you have no freedom of movement, where you're fear all the time, where you have, you're subjected to all kinds of things. Violence begets violence. Violence causes other
Yes.
violence. I mean, we know this. We know this. Some of us, I've been saying this for a long time, is that we can't keep, Israel for 20 years has been doing the same thing in Gaza. Is every time there's a rocket, Israel goes in with, 20 bombs or whatever it is. And it's like,
Yeah.
violence causes more violence. What do we think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen if you respond with like 10 times as much violence? You think that's going to like magically make the violence stop because you're it's the exact opposite. The exact opposite. There's
It's a vicious cycle. I call it vicious cycle.
Absolutely cycle.
It
The
will
only
not
way to
end.
stop the violence is by stopping the violence. We can't just say, oh, it's up to them to stop the violence. We can be as violent as we want, but the other people over there, they're the ones who have to stop the violence. And it's like, hello, if you want to stop violence, you have to stop violence, because every bit of violence just creates more and creates more hatred and more fear and more anger and more frustration and more sense of like, oh, there's no option. There's no other, there's nothing else to do. That sense of like, helplessness or hopelessness. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
tell us a little bit about what's been going on with, so now there have been like a few changes recently in the West Bank, right? So things are getting worse, you're saying? And also and also, I'm sorry, can we talk about the Allenby closing also? Is that okay to mention?
Yes, sure. So I will give you an accurate number. So just one moment about the numbers of gates around the West Bank now. Those gates are yellow, red, orange, and each gate means something. They were put by, of course, the IDF. The IDF is the only and sole responsible for those gates. We have around 970. Okay, that's according to data issued by the Wall and Settlement Resistance Commission, there are 916 checkpoints and gates in the West Bank and Jerusalem. So, for example, in Bethlehem alone, which is a small city in comparison to, for example, Nablus or Hebron, okay? We have around Bethlehem 123 checkpoints and gates. Just Bethlehem, which is like the smallest of all, And those gates are closed most of the time. They allow you for like one exit or one entrance from the village or the city. Lots of gates are closed since the 7th of October. And so people have to go all around to go to their parents' house, which is like in the next village, or it's like 3 kilometers away. But because of these gates, they have to go all around to get to their parents' house, That's what happened with me and my son, for example. He used to visit his dad in Walaje, and Walaje is just like the neighboring village from Beit Jala. And sometimes I couldn't get to my son, so I would leave him at his dad because there was no way out of Beit Jala and there was no way into Walaje. So
That's
this is to start
scary.
with these gates.
For parents, I mean, that's really scary.
Yes.
That's very
Yes, it is.
scary.
It
Yeah.
is, and then anything that happens, for example, let's say in Jenin, there was shooting attack in Jenin. They do collective punishment. They punish us all in the West Bank. They punish me, my sisters, my son, my neighbors, who don't even have to do with the attack that happened in Jenin, And Jenin is like up in the north, and we are here down in the south. It's just collective punishment. So anything that happens in Jenin, they close the whole West Bank so that you cannot move around. There is another checkpoint, which is the main checkpoint that connects the center and the north of the West Bank with the south, and it's called the container checkpoint. And it's the only way out from the south of the West Bank to the center and and the north. And this checkpoint is controlled by little kids, army that are like 18 years old with like nails, with the very beautiful tight pants, the girls there with full makeup, holding their rifles there and their M16, and they, whenever they want, they can open it. Whenever they don't want, they close it. If they have lunch break, they close it because they want to have lunch. If they want to go to the bathroom, they close it. And imagine all people will be stuck on either side, waiting for those soldiers to finish whatever they are doing. And sometimes there is no reason. They are just sitting there. They are sitting there and they don't allow anybody to pass. It's just no reason. Or maybe they got orders from higher rank, to close the checkpoint. This morning, just this morning, I came to Ramallah. I had a meeting in Ramallah with the Canadian representative office, and I had to leave the house at 7. I was on the checkpoint until 8 because it was closed, because, the soldiers not having a good mood, or they want to have their coffee. So they decided to close the checkpoint. And I was waiting for 1 hour and then I passed, but it's not easy to pass because after 1 hour of standing there will be like 4 lanes. Until the 4 lanes will pass, and then you have other cars coming from the other side, and like there is a block of cars. Until you get out from there, it's like 2 hours. I got to the meeting on time, but I was like from 7 until 10 on the way to Ramallah, which from my house in Beit Jala to Ramallah, if I want to go through Jerusalem and Walajeh and Malha and so on, it takes me 20 minutes, only 20 minutes. But because I'm Palestinian, I have to endure 3 hours of a stupid checkpoint just because they decided to do collective punishment for all of us.
Are you able to get into Israel at all? Are you able to
No. So this is a good question. Up until 1 month ago, I was able freely to go to Jerusalem. I used to go with you to the podcast and everything because I'm American citizen. So I have an American passport. I have never lived in the States as living, but I got it because my parents lived for so long in the States. And also my dad is a Navy veteran. So that's how we got our passports. But anyway, I used to go with this kind of visa waiver where I'm allowed to go to Israel as an American tourist for the past 2 years. 3 weeks ago, one of the settlers in Ras Al Auja, his name is Gabriel Kalish. He's like the head of the settlers there, holding his M16, and he actually belongs to the police department. He saw me there, and he started interrogating with me, trying to intimidate me, trying to tell me that like he's I'm shomer alecha, like he was telling me stuff to let me be afraid from him. And I wasn't afraid, not because I'm not afraid, but because I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just there to support the communities there. And guess what? 16 minutes of conversation, followed by the next day, I got banned, like blacklisted in Israel. And now I have police ban. So I can't go to Israel anymore. And now I put a lawyer to remove the ban, and it's just crazy. And like 2 weeks ago, I was terrified because, I got some news from my lawyer that they might arrest me even. And I didn't do anything wrong, But just because one settler who's supported by the police decided to ban me, they can. So imagine now I go to police and tell them, oh, Elana is a terrorist and we should ban her from entering Israel. That's how corrupt the Israeli government and the police is. You know, it's not even about Palestine and Israel now. It's about corruption. Like, how
It's
can
about absolute lawlessness. I mean, the West Bank is basically a place with no laws. There's
exactly?
nobody watching. There's nobody taking care to make sure that this is a place where there are laws that are followed, that there's justice, that international law is followed. I mean, it's just this kind of like a Wild West situation where anything goes. And then you have one guy who has like a tiny bit of power, and suddenly he's got a ton of power and he can control people's lives, and it just is. And how do we even go about fixing this? Like how does this get fixed even? Is there anybody like in charge? Is there anybody trying to make sure that laws are followed, that justice is followed, that people's lives are okay? Is there
No,
anybody
of
in
course,
charge of this?
Ilana not. Of course, Ilana not. You know, remember who's responsible for the police department, for the internal
It's Ben
security?
Greer. I mean,
It's Ben Gvir.
it's
It's
Ben
Ben
Greer.
Gvir. It's he's the worst of the worst. So imagine if the worst is taking care of that department, don't expect anything good out of
Yeah,
it there. You know,
that's
that's
terrifying.
the utmost, you know, injustice and corruption and using the power in a bad way.
It really is about exploiting
Um,
power. It's really, really about
yeah,
exploiting power. It's
yeah.
exploiting power to ruin people's lives
And
just because they
unfortunately,
can.
yani, unfortunately, for example, for me, I always used to say the law in Israel is really powerful. For example, when I had my divorce and so on, because my son and my ex-husband are Arab Israeli, so I went to the Israeli court. You know, did you hear what I said? I felt that it cut. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
you know, as a Palestinian going to the Israeli court to ask for like custody and mezonot and all of that, the law was standing with me, not with me as a Palestinian, but as a mother, you know? And I was able to go through with all the court thing and, you know, all the law. And I was always saying, wow, you know, how good the law in Israel, the civil law, of course, is good. But now after not the 7th of October, even after Ben Gvir took over, it's just like exploitation of law. That's what's happening in Israel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so could I use one last thing, and then we'll talk about Palestinian statehood, which is really
Sure.
important. Just last question. So, what happened this week with the Allenby crossing? Bibi announced that the Allenby crossing is going to be permanently closed, right? So that on top of all of these limitations that you're talking about, all these limitations on movement, now we have this, which basically says you can't even get in and out at all. Can you explain this?
Yes. So this came as a response to 47 states recognizing the state of Palestine, and this is exactly what does it mean, collective punishment. So Canada recognized Palestine, UK recognized Palestine, France recognized Palestine. The punishment is on us. So he closed the only way out from the West Bank. It's our only way out to the outer world. So if they close that bridge or that crossing border, which is called Allenby, there is no way out for us. So we're stuck. And it's terrifying, Elana. It's terrifying just to think
Yeah.
about it, because it just reminds me of Gaza. So they closed the borders, no way in, no way out, and now they can do whatever they want with us, and there is no way even to escape, to take my son and run away. Why?
You know,
Because I'm
in
Palestinian,
Paris,
I don't deserve it.
in Paris in June, there were about 100 or so Palestinians from the West Bank, and
Yeah.
it was such a story getting to Paris, and they had to travel. They couldn't travel to Ben Gurion Airport. They couldn't just cross over to go to Ben Gurion Airport and fly out. They had to get to Amman. They had to travel all the way to Amman through the Allenby crossing, and then get to Paris. There was no like easy way. And so now with like Allenby closing, it's like, what now? What? So even if Palestinians wanted to come to the UN, for example, to participate in what the UN is doing, they can't even do that. It's insane, and I find it crazy to think about how much power Israel gives itself. I mean, it's not how much power Israel. I don't understand how Israel can just take this power. I don't understand how Israel just has the power. And also, talking about let's talk about the Palestinian statehood thing. So 147 countries announced that they recognize a Palestinian state, and Israel sort of comes and says, "No, we refuse." And I keep asking myself, who gives Israel so much power? Why does Israel think? Why does the Israel government think that it has this power, that it has the right to just...
You know why? Because it has been doing this thing for the past 75 or more plus years, and nobody put Israel into accountability. And even if they do whatever they do, nobody punished them, not even international law. Like, come on, they hit Qatar, and Qatar has the right to respond immediately, but they didn't, and nobody is telling anything to Israel, like this is wrong, or like you cannot do that. Only condemnation and statements on like the official pages, but not more than that. And nothing happens. And then if by any, of course I don't expect Qatar to respond. If Qatar wants to respond, then they will become, terrorist state. They are attacking Israel, It's just like Israel does whatever they are doing and then accuse others of being terrorists and using their power or like their arms or like their rockets to bomb Israel. And they are anti-Semitic and they are terrorists. But you started it. How come you bomb a country, a sovereign country, with their own government, with their own like stations, you cannot
Trump
just do
said
it.
You know what Trump said? Trump said every time Bibi gets close to, having to make a deal, he finds something else to bomb. That's what.
Yes, and that's true. And all the deals have been cancelled or refused from Israel. None of them were refused from Hamas, though Trump all the time says, Hamas are not accepting our deals. Of course, if you are saying the deal is to release all the hostages and remove the arms from Hamas, and we'll stay and occupy Gaza. And you want Hamas to respond by yes? Like, even if I don't support Hamas and I don't like them, and. You cannot do that.
Well, he knows.
You want a solution with...
Bibi Netanyahu knows. He puts up conditions. He does what's called moving the goalposts. That every time they're close to a deal, also he'll add something on. He'll make a different goal. He'll invent something new. He'll invent some new condition. He does it all the time. Okay, let's hear. Okay, so 147 countries led by France and Saudi Arabia, and also now Canada and the UK and Australia and a whole bunch of other countries. 147 countries decided to declare a Palestinian state. And in the UN this week, there were all these meetings having to do with promoting a two-state solution. Okay, Amira, tell us what you think about that.
Recognizing Palestine is one thing. It's good in general. That finally, at least we can say we have a state. So, for example, yesterday I saw one of the things that really made me smile was the British consulate, in Jerusalem. And they changed their address to Sheikh Jarrah, East Jerusalem, Palestine. And it made me smile because this is very important to see Palestine as a state, even if we don't have anything that says it's a state. We're like occupation. We have like settlements. We have we don't have any control over almost 88% of our land. But still, this is good thing. On paper, it's beautiful. But you know what? It doesn't mean anything on the ground. It doesn't mean anything. It's like being told, yes, this is your house, but someone else still holds the keys. Like for example, settlers and so on. The land is ours, but settlers take it, burn it, and attack us while we're locked out. Like this, what does it mean? Like it doesn't mean anything, unless there is actual movement, actual steps towards having a full state, not only on papers, but physical state, where I can move freely from Bethlehem to Ramallah to Nablus, I will not be happy about that. And you know what, Elana? They recognized Palestine, all these 147, and the backlash is on us. We have been living, as I said before, in hell for the past 3 days. It's just hell from all aspects. It's impossible.
So what's going to be with this? So like, is there anything? So, I've heard a lot of criticism also that like, oh, well, statehood doesn't matter if all these countries are still not stopping, what's happening in Gaza. They're still supplying arms and right. So there's also that. So it's very nice to say we want to establish state, but in reality, nothing has changed. And will this even have an effect on Netanyahu's government? Will it get Netanyahu to stop bombing Gaza? Like, will it?
No, because, for example, one of the things that a state can do when they are recognized officially, it can go, for example, to the ICC or ICJ. Fine? So we have been, Gaza has been under attack, under genocide since 2 years. And so many organizations and so many countries even went to the ICC and, put claims and like gave evidence of genocide and this. Even like 1 week ago, even the UN recognized that this is a genocide. It's not something that I'm saying now out of feelings, but it's the states, and it's an official thing now. But what happened? We put our stuff in the ICC and the ICJ. They said that they will do arrest warranty against Netanyahu, Smotrich, and Ben-Gvir. And what happened? Nothing. Netanyahu went the next day to the States and he was welcomed as the first president in the White House. And he crossed all the skies all the way to the United States.
Except that I heard that his plane actually changed its route. It went a long way, so it doesn't actually have to pass over any of the European countries, because apparently he is afraid. He is afraid of arrest warrants.
Yeah, but
right.
Still, what does that mean?
Well, it means he's afraid.
It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Even if his route was changed, it's fine. But then genocide is still continuing in Gaza. Occupation is still continuing. Closures, checkpoints, craziness in the West Bank is still continuing. Settler violence is just at its maximum. Yesterday, a kid from Mughayr village was shot by a settler, not even IDF. And guess what? In his funeral the next day, the same settler and his gangs shot at the funeral. And so many people were injured.
I didn't hear the story. I didn't even hear the story.
If this doesn't stop.
I didn't read about the story anywhere.
Yes. Yesterday I can send you the link and everything about this.
Which is its own problem, by the way, that it's not anywhere in the news. This is the first time you've been hearing the story. And I have a lot of what you have on Signal. I also have a lot of groups sharing news, and I missed this story completely. So a kid was shot by a settler, and the next day they were shooting at the funeral. Wow. Okay.
So you see, the recognition of the state of Palestine, great, thank you very much. We appreciate, at least now I can say I'm Palestinian, without having to argue about there is Palestine or there isn't. there is Palestine, officially. But doesn't if the status quo doesn't change, it doesn't mean anything. And I was today even in the meeting with the Canadian representative, and that's what I told him. The representative there, the ambassador, I told him we need like political level to interfere and intervene and pressure more and take action against what's happening either in Gaza or the West Bank or East Jerusalem.
I understand.
So, yeah.
So I have a couple of other questions to ask you. First of all, could we talk about the two-state solution? Because a lot of these declarations and the UN declarations were all about, now we're going to recognize a two-state solution. But we've had this conversation already a few times where we understand that the two-state solution is sort of old at this point because it doesn't really reflect
The reality.
because also, like, first of all, there are a lot of solutions. Not a lot. There are at least 3 other solutions besides this two-state solution. And there's a land for all, for example, which promotes a variation of the two-state solution that's more of a confederate or a confederation where there's states, but there's, loose borders or soft borders, because there's a recognition that there are no really good borders because everybody wants access to everything. There are holy sites, there's water, there's beaches, and everybody deserves the right to be able to have access to the places that are important to them. So like right now, I speak to a lot of Palestinians who are like, well, we can't get to the beach, or my kids have never been to the beach, we've never seen the water, kind of thing. And it's a crazy thing for me to think about. Actually, I volunteered in the past. It was sort of illegal volunteering to take kids from Hebron to the beach. So I would take these kids and it would be like their first time ever seeing the water. And that's just crazy to me. I mean, it really invoked a lot of guilt for me because, like, why do we go to the beach all the time. Why do I and my family have that right? And people who live 30 kilometers away don't. That just there's like such a deep injustice to that for me. Like the water should be common to all of us. Like we should all have that right. And so the two-state solution, if it creates these like hard lines, these hard boundaries, it doesn't really create the long-term solution that we want, which is for everybody to all have the same rights and the same access and the same ability to live life with the things that are important to them, with their holy sites and their religion and family gatherings or just joy. Everybody should have the right to access to joy, the freedom to move around and live a life that you want to live. So something about that two-state solution doesn't really address that. So I think about this, about how, the UN is talking about this two-state solution, which is, 20 years old, but the people on the ground who are working full-time, 24/7, on finding solutions are sort of, for the most part, in a different place about it. They've like moved on from this two-state solution to something else. Is that right?
Yes, I do agree. And people, when you mention the two-state solution in just a normal person walking down the street now, you go and ask him, he tells you, this is stupid. Like doesn't make sense. This is illogical, Like which state you are talking about? Like if we talk about the Palestinian state, the Israeli state, it's already established, it has borders and the Palestinian state, where? Between the settlements or the settlers? Like it doesn't really make sense. And even if we want now to decide to do really a two-state solution on the borders of the 67, so we have to take out all the settlers who are living in the West Bank and send them to Israel. And what does that mean? Moving around 700,000 people from the West Bank all the way out to Israel, back to Israel. And I'm not sure of the number, maybe a little bit less, but this is like, it doesn't make sense. And what about the buildings that were built and all the instructions and all the roads? Like it just doesn't make sense. So we have to find a solution. Like, for example, two states, one homeland is a solution. For example, there are other things. It's like there are like federation, there are like confederation, and I really like them. And this is the most logical part. As you said, I want to go to Nazareth to pray and I want to go to Jerusalem to pray, and I want you as Jewish to come, for example, to Shechem, to Nablus, to Joseph Well. I want you to go to Hebron, to Abraham, tomb. So it's just, I don't want to state where I'm not allowed to go to that side or you're not allowed to come to this side. I want a state where everybody is free to move, at least. And then, okay, on a political side, you want it to be, you want your own state, fine. Confederation is a good example. Federation is also a good example. You will have your own law, your own state, your own, but physically on the ground, it's not like one whole state. It will be, confederation or a federation. It's like, let's say, United States of America. It's a whole one big country, USA, but then you have all these kind of smaller entities. So why not to be like this? It will be more complicated than the US, of course, but it will not be impossible. But a two-state, it will be impossible. I'm telling you, living in the West Bank and driving in the car every day in the roads, it's just impossible. Impossible. Like going down from my house from Beit Jala all the way to Jericho. I counted the other day 7 new outposts in the past few months, not even past 2 years. 7 new outposts on the way just from Ma'ale Adumim all the way to Almog Junction. 7. Wow. 7 only on that way. Wow. 7.
And I remember when we went together, we did that episode, and I remember you said something that really, really stuck with me. Because when you do that drive around from Ma'ale Adumim, Almog Junction, there's a lot of space. There are a lot of places there where there's nothing going on. But you said that the outpost is put right on the tush of the Arab villages, right there, for the sake of just nudging. It's just for the purpose of irritating. Yeah. So you're driving through the space, and there's tons of places. You want to go find a mountain, find the mountain.
Exactly. It's like in Oja, when you came with us, you saw it, right? They come and bring their herds down the valley. And they bring them only to the Palestinian community. And it's a mass area there. You saw it with your own eyes. They can go to the right, to the left, up, down, but no, they choose to come where the Palestinian community is, just to get them out of there. So when you look at the situation, you will realize that it's not about land or rights, or I want to own this plot or you want to own it. It's about ethnic cleansing of Palestinians and make it a full Jewish state with no Arabs, no Palestinians, no Arabs, no Christians, no Muslims, only as a pure Jewish state. That's what it will look like if they continue with this plan.
It makes me sad to agree with you. But I saw it. I saw exactly what you're talking about. First of all, we know from all of the different laws and regulations and the tricks, the zillions of tricks that the army and the government have for removing Palestinians from their homes. We know the story of Masafer Yatta, and the zillions of ways that the state and the army together just figured out how to just get people to leave. So this is strategic. It's these multi-pronged strategies to get Palestinians to leave their homes. We saw it. What we saw in Ras Al Oja was that they're there just to make life so difficult for the Palestinians who are there that they just want to leave. I mean, it's angering, and it's infuriating, and it's heartbreaking, and shaming. I feel shame about this also, but it's I wish I could argue with you. I wish I could say oh no, Amira, you're wrong, but you're not wrong. And that breaks my heart. You're not.
I wish I was wrong also. Don't worry about it. I wish I was wrong. It's just so tiring to talk about this all over again and nothing is changing. On the contrary, it's just worse and worse and worse. But believe me, I wish I want to go to Jerusalem and go to Mamilla, mall and sit and have coffee in Aroma Cafe. I love their iced coffee, for example. I'm not allowed to do that anymore even.
Well, I look forward to the day when you are.
Yeah.
Next time you are, the iced coffee's on me.
And please get me the chocolate that sometimes they put it and sometimes they don't. I always ask them, please, I want that chocolate. Give me one.
Oh, I feel you about the
Yes.
chocolate, let me tell you. Amira,
Good.
wow.
Habibti,
So we're finished. We're coming to the end of season 4.
We wanted to start it in June, and then there was the war on Iran, and then we had to postpone it, and then we postponed all the speakers, and then I got busy with the USB IP, and oh my God, it was a hell of a season, honestly.
Oh my God. And like what you were saying when you opened, you said that, you wake up in the morning and there are like 1,000 bits of news. Like, yeah, I had this experience about 2 weeks ago. I sat down to write a blog post, right? I had this thought that I wanted to make a commentary, actually having not so much to do with this, but having to do with Jeffrey Epstein and connections between Epstein and Netanyahu and Trump. I sat down to write this blog. And I said, before I write the blog, I'm just going to open with a paragraph about some of the things that were happening today. And suddenly, like, that list grew and grew. And like, here are just bits of news, things that we're dealing with today about death and wars and attacks and bombings and craziness. And like, that was it. I never got to the thing that I wanted to blog about because there was so much. There was so much in just one day that was like mind-bogglingly bad. And it's really hard. It's really hard to like function. I mean, it's hard to function, never mind. It's hard to function, and then it's hard to find your center and to find the place in yourself where you want to like speak up and say, hang on a second, wait, no, this is not okay. Like, and I think that's part of the strategy, right? Part of this, it's what Steve Bannon called flooding the zone, right? Netanyahu does this all the time. It's called flooding the zone. He fills us with zillions of attacks in a zillion different ways so that you can't even focus on one for too long because the next crazy attack thing is going to happen from somewhere else. And that's how it's destabilizing. It destabilizes us so that we end up feeling powerless and helpless and hopeless. And it's like, okay, so we're just going to stop fighting now because, like, where do we start?
So let's see. Let's hope for the next season will be fine. Let's hope to meet and do our podcast in season 5 on the beach.
A beach, and then we'll go to Aroma. For the beach to Aroma, and we'll end with chocolate.
Great.
Let's do that. Okay.
Thank you very much for all what you are doing and all the efforts, and I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you for being you and being so beautiful, and you're a beautiful soul, beautiful human being, and I'm so grateful for our friendship and our collaboration. So grateful.
Habibti, the same here. Take care and see you soon.
Thanks for listening to Women Ending War. If you want to help create change, you should join us.
Subscribe, like, comment, or share. Tell your friends about us. Talk about it. Be part of the solution.
Thanks, and see you next time.